Hello, Lions fans. This is Jeff Risdon with the Detroit Lions podcast and Lions Wire. And since the Lions played on Thursday night and beat the Packers, very satisfyingly, I might add, it's Sunday. There's no Lions football. Let's do a mailbag. Posted these, as I always do, to the podcast Patreon Slack channel. Asked them to give me some questions, and they gave me some good ones. I have not pre-screened these, and I always do these in one take, so you get my honest answers. They might not always be the most informed because I don't do. I like the spontaneity of it, so we're gonna go with that. I do have one question though, also that I got from Twitter. Saturday night, that's a very good one that I'm gonna answer on here as well because it's something that I think Lions fans will care about. Let's see what we got here. All right, we got from Mr. Lava Lava. I know who that is. Moving forward, is Jack Campbell an off-ball linebacker who occasionally rushes, or a Parsons-esque pass rusher from the line who sometimes drops? That's a question that's got a lot of tentacles to it. Some of that depends on what the future is with Alex Anzalone and Derek Barnes and Rodrigo, because I think the fact that Barnes can do the pass rush stuff and the more edgy stuff is things that the other guys can't do. And that's a role that the Lions don't really have. That's a role that James Houston and Julian Okwara were going to play. But guess what? They're both not on the roster right now. Houston's hurt. He's maybe coming back late in the year, but I wouldn't count on a lot, and he wasn't very good when he played. And Okwara, who knows what's going on? They still haven't activated him off the PUP. So Campbell's really the only guy that can play that role, and I think that's more of why you're seeing him there than any desire to make him a position change, because he is a natural Mike. Now the issue is that that's also kind of Anzalone's deal, and Derek Barnes has been doing fairly well playing. Shouldn't really call it a Mike. It's more of it. They run the 2 ILB look, and those guys are definitely inside linebackers. Anzalone can play some outside. Barnes maybe. The interesting thing here is that they're not asking Barnes to do the pass rushing, or not as much as they are Campbell, and that's weird to me because he was a really good pass rusher at Purdue. And they, for whatever reason, have just not done that. Now, some of that is the fact that you're finally seeing the fruits of the labor of the position transfer, where Barnes finally looks comfortable and really, really good playing the off-ball linebacker role. And I don't think that they want to necessarily mess up with that. And Campbell has a diverse enough athletic profile that he can do some of that. It's growing pains, too. But I think it's nice to have that in the bag, but I think you're going to see him long-term being much more of an off-ball linebacker. But we'll see. Next question. Okay, this is sort of related to it. From Trade Pakistan. Seems like BJ and Campbell are still a little unsure on how to... Oh, okay. I thought it was going to be Brad Holmes. Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell are still a little unsure on how to best utilize Jamir Gibbs. Why do you think that is? I think this is a fantasy football problem more than it's a real football problem. I think that David Montgomery is clearly the lead back. He's been great. I don't understand necessarily the consternation for why people are getting upset that David Montgomery, who's playing really damn well, is getting all of the carries, and Jamir Gibbs, who's been hit and miss on his carries, isn't. Like, you're trying to win football games. You're not trying to win fantasy football titles here. I think you saw in week 3 when Montgomery was out that Gibbs played very well. Was it 17 carries for, I think it was 77, 79 yards, making some broken tackles. He did drop a pass. He hasn't had the balance through contact that I want to see, nor that I saw at Alabama or Georgia Tech for that matter. And I think that's something, I think the speed of the game at the NFL level is something that he's still adjusting to. And that's going to be a work in progress. So you're looking at it this way. Would you rather take Montgomery, who's been very, very effective? He destroyed the Packers. He's destroyed everybody he's played against this year. He's been fantastic. Do you want to give him less reps in place of a guy who's struggling some, but also showing real flashes of being, I don't know, Alvin Kamara-esque, Austin Eckler-esque. That like those guys lasted as long as they have and are special because there are not necessarily guys that are going to get a ton of carries, but when you sprinkle them in, you get more maximum impact out of it. And I think that's what the Lions' plan was, and will be with Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that touches the ball in a situation where the backfield is healthy. I don't think he's ever going to get more than 15 carries. I don't think he's ever going to get more than 5 or 6 targets in a game. Maybe as the matchup goes, he might get more than that target wise. But and so this comes into, well, they drafted him number 12 overall. Yeah, they did, and I think that's something that you're going to have to deal with. That they drafted a weapon, but not necessarily a overly used weapon. Excuse me, there had to sneeze. He's been fine. I haven't heard any complaints at all from inside the building. Haven't heard a lot of complaints from Lions fans. Most of it is coming from national analysts and fantasy football people. Fantasy football is not real. Stop being dissuaded by them. Thank you. Next. This is a good one. I like this one. From Nicholas K. What has the defensive line done different in the last 2 weeks to create more pressure and sacks? All right, this is good because this is something that we saw, and Dan Campbell actually addressed it after the Seattle game, where he talked about guys just have to win their one-on-one matchups. Well, maybe the scheme needs to help them a little bit, and they didn't do that at all in Seattle. It was straight, like they almost two-gapped up front. I don't think that they were necessarily supposed to be doing that, but that was the net effect of it. And now they're knifing into gaps. They're attacking the gaps better. You're seeing twists. You're seeing stunts. You're seeing gimmickies. You're seeing loops. You're seeing setup and blitz feigns and actual blitzes. And it's working very well because I think the offensive line is being confused. This goes back to something that I wrote at Lions Wire after the Atlanta game. When this defense and the personnel specifically outside of Aiden Hutchinson get help from the scheme and from Aaron Glenn, doing different things than just go beat your guy, actually give them physical instructions on how they can beat their guy and let them do more creative things to beat their guy or guys. It works fantastic. It's a great defense. I think you're seeing Aleem McNeil blossom because he's allowed to do more. Like, you want to rush it. You want to crash the right guard so Kaminsky can loop inside you, so Hutchinson can loop from the other side and go in the same hole. Like, yeah, do that. They didn't do any of that early on, and I think that that's a mistake that Aaron Glenn rectified, and I hope that we keep it up. Interestingly, in the Green Bay game, we saw them sort of get back to the passive, more vanilla things. And that's when Green Bay started to make a little bit of a comeback. And I hope that Glenn gleans from that film that you just can't do that. This I'm sure there's going to be some questions on this, but in general, I wanted the Lions to go out and step on their necks, snap their throats, do whatever. And they didn't really do that Thursday night. And I understand their rationale for why. But next time I want to see a little bit more aggression out of that. To preempt a couple questions that might come. All right. From Modman. Do the coaches hate J-Mo? And by the way, everybody in the Slack who responded to this laughed at it. I'm going to laugh at it too. It's a fun question. No, they don't. I just hope we see J-Mo smiling as he catches a touchdown pass in Week 5 in Carolina. I really want that. I really want that. All right. Good question here from Steel Hank Reardon. Lions seem to be on a roll. Do they need to make any acquisitions or trades to take this thing the distance, or do you think we've got the squad? That's a good question. I think if you can get Mike Evans, I'd be interested in that even as a 1-year rental. That's a really dang good football player who fills the need that the Lions have, even with J-Mo coming back. I'm not going to say no to that. Do I think they're going to pursue it? No, I don't. I don't think they want to commit So this is one of the things. If they trade draft assets, I can see them doing it. But the problem will be is that they have a lot of mouths that they've got to feed after this offseason, including Goff. And I saw a question on here. I'm going to get to that one next because it relates to this. You got to pay Panay. You got to pay Amon-Ra. You got to pay Goff. You got to pay CJ if you want him back. And I think he does want to come back. There are extensions to be had. You got to pay Derek Barnes if he keeps playing the way he is. He's going to command a lot more money than I think we all expected. Some of that money is the cap room they have now that's going to get pushed forward, rolled over into 2024. And they're going to use that so they don't have to put on 7 void years on Jared Goff's contract. Like that's their plan. It's pretty clear that that's their plan. And we've seen them react that way. If you bring in a Mike Evans or I'm trying to think, like there aren't really, I mean, defensive pass rusher, just if somebody gets hurt or something like that. I don't think the Lions want to pay that. And I think they're confident enough in the guys that they've got that unless there's like catastrophic rash of injuries, like Hutchinson goes down, I think that would change that dynamic. But because I think that would seriously impact their ability to win even one playoff game. Because, like, look, as much as we're liking Romeo Okwara and who's played very well, and Kaminsky, and they're not the catalyst. And I think if you lose the catalyst, you might have to do something to patch that hole. Especially if Hutchinson's going to get back late in the year. But that's just hypothetical. I don't think that they're going to make the move. Would I want them to? Yeah. Like, again, I'm not saying no to Mike Evans, but I really don't see that happening. They're not making a move for a quarterback. They're not. No. I see these weird rumors from these accounts that aggregate things that aren't true, and I just shake my head, and you should too. So where's the question? I saw it here. When does the Goff extension happen? That's a great question because I do think that's coming, and I think it's coming during the season. And I did not think that going into the season. I didn't think that they were going to get that done. I think bye week is a great time to get contract negotiations done. I think Jared Goff has proven that last year's finish was not a fluke. He's playing great. I know he's thrown an interception in 3 straight games. Okay. That he's taking a little bit more chances too. And I think that, playing behind the offensive line that he had, by and large, in the first couple of games where he threw the interceptions and just missed cues, that's going to happen. He's not going to go 300 passes again without throwing an interception. I think his ability to his mastery of Ben Johnson's offense and the way that he is running it, he's so dialed in and integral to everything that they do on offense that I do think they're going to reward that with an extension. How much is it going to be? You didn't ask that, but I'll try to answer it. It's going to be over $50 million a year. I think it's not going to be like 7 years, whatever that times 50 is, 350. He's not getting Mahomes money. He's getting Kirk Cousins money. He's going to get that. I wrote it down too, and I don't want to flip through the internet while I'm doing this. But my guess would be somewhere in the 3 years, $155 million range, with a fairly hefty portion of that guaranteed, and then a void year or 2 or 3 tacked on just for cap purposes. That's what I expect him to get. Doesn't mean that's what he's going to get. Doesn't mean he's not going to get more or less. That's just my general ballpark figure from where I'm settling at. And I do think that they are trying to get that done now. I've heard rumblings that, and by the way, Goff is not involved in it. He is one of the players who believes that you hire your agent to handle these negotiations, and the agent will handle it. And he'll come to the player when it gets serious and not before then. That's there's a lot of players that do that, by the way. I think that I don't think that a lot of fans appreciate that. That is something that agents actually do for their players. Not every player wants that, but Goff is the guy who doesn't want to deal with negotiations until it's almost time to sign the dang contract. So I think that's where we're at with that. From Brandt, like this one. With the caveat that we are in the early part of the season, who or what has been the biggest surprise so far, and who or what has been the biggest disappointment? Biggest surprise. I would say Aleem McNeil, but I was pretty bullish on him this offseason, and he has lived up to it. I think disappointment-wise, I'll do that one first because there's a couple that popped up in my head instantly. One is that Broderick Martin isn't playing. He's a third-round pick. I know that the defensive line is doing fine with Benito and Bugs and Aleem. They're doing fine. I still would have liked to have seen him get active and just be active for a game. Maybe get some reps, in the second half of that or towards the end of that Packers game, just to get his feet wet. My understanding from talking to somebody in Allen Park after week 2 was that he's just not consistent enough in practice and at pad level and gap assignment and responsibility, specifically in the run game. And that's something that he's got to work on before he gets active. But that's been a little bit disappointing because I thought that he showed some things in the preseason and also the joint practices against the Giants. I thought he looked like he could contribute, 10 snaps a game, and we're not seeing that. So that's disappointing. I have been disappointed in James Mitchell. He got 12 snaps the other day and earned the low Pro Football Focus grade that he got. I don't think he was the lowest, but he was down there. Got 2 snaps the week before. I think it was 2 snaps the week before that. He's just not made the step that you hope. And one of the things that we saw it in training camp, and any of you who were at training camp and came to the Lions training camp party, by the way, thank you for coming out. He's just not fast. And I don't want to say that he's like Michael Roberts out there, but there's not a lot of suddenness to anything that he does. And I think that that's going to be more of a struggle than we expected with him coming out of Virginia Tech. I think he's healthy. I don't think it's the knee bothering him. I think it's just he's just not that twitchy guy that I think a lot of us wanted him to be. So that's been a disappointment too. But again, that's a 5th round pick from 2022 that's not doing great. Other pleasant surprise, I will say, I got to give it up to Ifeatu Melifonwu. And there was another question about him, and I will just preempt this without reading it. I think Iffy's been the best Iffy we've seen, and I do think that specifically in the Packers and Falcons game, when he was asked to attack and given one, hey, this is what you do on this play, do it, don't worry about what else is going on, he's been really good. He can react off that very well. It keeps him blind, and he's not distracted by everything that's going on. Read and react is not what he does. He is a proactive player. I want to see him not reacting so much other than to what's in his direct line of vision. And I think that's something that has bothered him going back to college. It showed on his college tape. He was a guy that, to quote the Dream Theater song, there's nowhere to set my aim, so I'm everywhere. He's doing a lot better when he's given a focal point. And I think that that's something that he has worked very hard at. He deserves credit for that. Look, I've given him an incredible amount of crap over the years. He's playing well, and I think it's here to stay, and that makes me very happy. So I like that with Iffy. Wow, we're up on 20 minutes here. I'm going to do a couple more. All right. So this is from Chef James, and this is a good one. I like this. So who will start or play in this next game? Jerry Jacobs, or Emmanuel Mosley, or some sort of combination? I think you're going to see a combination, and I think there's a combination of reasons why. God, sorry for the cheesiness on that. I deserve a little coffee for that one. Yeah. Some of it is the fact that Mosley hasn't practiced much, and we're going to see him get some reps this week during practice. I hope to be over in Allen Park on Thursday. I'm en route to somewhere else, and hope to be able to see a little of that firsthand. He just hasn't had the reps. Remember, this is a guy who has had 2 live action practices since last October. None of them full contact. But I learned the other day that I erroneously spoke and said that one of them was. They weren't. He's basically been through 2 walkthroughs in a year. Kind of need a little bit more experience than that. So I do think that, and Dan Campbell mentioned it, they're going to ease him back in. The other part of this equation is that Jerry Jacobs just played a phenomenal game against Green Bay. Redemption for Jerry Jacobs. Made me very happy. He got his hands on 4 balls. He caught 2 of them. He probably should have caught the 3rd. I think Jerry will admit to that. He played great. Again, he was aggressive. He was allowed to play to his strengths, and I think that's something that Aaron Glenn has has done in the last couple of weeks that have done very well. Now, he did not have a good matchup in Seattle or Atlanta, and his play reflected it. I think you saw Jerry at his best, and I think that that's something that they want to keep. And I think you're going to see them split it, and I wonder if they will mix and match the split based on what Carolina does at wide receiver and also at quarterback. Bryce Young might not play. Who knows what's going on with their wide receivers? I would like to see Jerry match up against DJ Chark because I think he knows how to handle that because he practiced against him very well. And I think Jerry's more physical style will suit that well in disrupting the timing. We'll see about that, but I wonder about that. But I do think you're going to see them both. And if I had to call the snap percentage split, I think you're going to see Jerry maybe 60 to Emmanuel's 40%. That's my guess anyways. I do want to get to the one that came from Twitter here. Let me pull it up here. It's from Christian Lehman. That's a great question. Do you think that having a kicker who could consistently hit 55-plus yard field goals would change the strategy for Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell, or would they still be just as aggressive when appropriate? So this is a question that we've discussed in the Lions media amongst ourselves at practices a lot. And the general consensus, and I'm a card-carrying member of this, is that they wouldn't try those field goals even if they had a kicker who could reliably do it. And some of that stems from a conversation I had with Dave Phipp during training camp. Also talked to Phipp in a couple of different press conferences, and he's kind of hinted at the same thing, but not. They are much more focused on getting aggressive and winning the analytic metrics. And the analytics, by and large, say that unless it's like a situation where you absolutely have to have the points, kicking a 50-yard field goal is stupid. Kicking a 55-yard kick is asinine, unless it's like 4th and 15. If it's 4th and 3 and you choose to kick there, the analytics tell you you're playing to lose. Dan Campbell's a big believer in that. I know people don't necessarily buy into that because of his persona and everything, but they study the analytics very heavily. They have an analytics department in the Detroit Lions. They lean on those things very heavily, and Dan is a believer in that. So the aggressiveness, I don't think, would change whether they had that kicker or not. The one time was when they issued the kick, and this was in the Seattle game, and Patterson could have kicked a 49-yard field goal and gotten points, and Dan went for it instead. That was one of those where I believe the metrics said that it was a borderline call. Like, you could go or you could kick, and it's kind of like your win percentage change that you have, which I'm not a big believer in the win percentage thing, but it is what it is. It was sort of a neutral call. And I do think that in those situations that having a more reliable long-ranged kicker would help sway towards taking the more sure 3 points rather than trying to go for it, 4th and 4 at the opposing 29. I do think that would make a difference there. So I hope that answers the question. It is interesting to me that Michael Badgley is still around, still on the practice squad. He clearly has a bigger leg than Riley Patterson, but I'm not sure that they trust it. And I think it's one of those situations where, Patterson has been very good. One of the things that we saw all summer was that Patterson was like really close shaving a lot of his even mid-range kicks, 37 yards. He's just barely getting it inside that left upright. He's been solid, been strong. No complaints through what his performance has been. I would have liked to have seen the kick in Seattle, and again, I just don't think that that's something that Dan really is all that interested in kicking 55-yard field goals. And I know it goes against the grain of what we as Lions fans who've been blessed with Eddie Murray and Jason Hanson and Matt Prater over the years, fantastic long-range kickers. It's weird, but it's just something that we're going to have to get used to because that's not what Dan Campbell rolls. You know what? Let's wrap that. We're having a fun day. Enjoy a Sunday of football. I'm recording this Sunday morning. Hopefully it gets up sometime Sunday, and you can watch this. If not, enjoy Monday Night Football. And we will talk about the Carolina Panthers and going against the first place 3-1 Detroit Lions in Week 5 later this week. Thanks.